Good evening, everybody. I promised not to start with statistics, and actually I've gone right back on my word, so I'm just going to give you a few statistics. When I joined the Metropolitan Police Service, less than 1% of officers were of colour, and 22% of the population of London was non-white, and Macpherson labelled the Metropolitan Police Service as institutionally racist. When I left the organisation in 2020, 16% of officers were of colour, and 1.3 were of Caribbean or African origin. And the census told us that 46% of Londoners were non-white. You don't have, and a year after I left, there was the Casey Review, which labelled the Metropolitan Police Service institutionally racist. So you can see the pattern that's developing here. Now, you don't have to be Carol Waterman to figure out that actually the gap is widening rather than narrowing. And representation is important because our communities want people who look like them to police them. But it has to be acknowledged that representation can be problematic because we've seen over the years how representation can be weaponized and used against the very people it's there to help and to protect. Throughout my career, I would say that two things were consistent. The label of institutional racism stood, and the rejection of that label by police leaders. They've had so many missed opportunities to actually embrace that label and move forward with that brutal murder of George Floyd. Globally, organisations across the world took a step back, reflected, admitted institutional racism, put plans together and moved forward. But UK policing, and particularly Met policing, and I remember at the time, Commissioner Cressida Dick actually said institutional racism didn't exist, and she called it an unhelpful term. She didn't tell us why it was unhelpful. The second opportunity was at the launch of the Police Race Action Plan, but 43 police chief constables got together and they couldn't agree if policing was institutionally racist. But yet they were ready to launch a plan, and they took years to develop a plan to get rid of institutional racism. It's crazy, it's madness. So why do they find it so difficult to embrace and accept that label? I would say that there's three main reasons, and there are probably many others, but I think it's political leaders and police leaders don't have the appetite. I've seen over my career that tackling institutional racism, structural racism, has a trade-off, and it's been traded off with other priorities and wider agendas. Saw that after 9/11 and then after the murder of Sarah Everard. We live in a climate now where nationalism is on the increase. We saw that in the riots that Andy George mentioned during the summer. Polarisation has increased with Brexit, after Brexit and othering. And then there's been a whole debate around woke policing, taking the knee, and Black Lives Matter. In policing itself, they've created Blue Lives Matter to counteract the narrative of Black Lives Matter. Whole debates about wearing the thin blue line badge, which is a symbol. The thin blue line is a symbol that of racism, and it's related to American neo-Nazis, Proud Boys and the American Patriots, yet police officers are determined to wear that badge. So, and the second reason I would say is police chiefs will tell you that, well, they fear media criticism of admitting institutional racism. But here's the thing, they've invested millions of pounds in police comms, and it's a beast. And we've seen that work, and they've used that to counteract the narrative in the Chris Carber case. And so it makes no sense. Why are they not using that to tackle structural, institutional racism? Third reason is that police leaders say they fear a backlash. They don't want to alienate police officers, and it's difficult to work with the force when there's no morale. But surely that comes back to good leadership, good, ethical, strong leadership. And I think that's what's missing in policing in the UK. It's strong, ethical leadership. To admit institutional racism is important because rejection of the phrase, is actually evidence of the phenomenon. And it's important to our communities that policing admits institutional racism. Because what is the job of policing? It's there to protect the public. And our communities have suffered racism for decades. And it's also important to the communities for policing to respect the definition that Macpherson gave of institutional racism, and then Baroness Casey. But in my career, 30 years, and I know what you're all thinking, you cannot be old enough. I am not. But in my career, I saw that policing changed really positive. There were some positive changes in policing. How they investigate things, although some of you might disagree. How they deal with hate crime. How they, the introduction of family liaison officers after the death of Stephen Lawrence. And how they deal with emergency life support. Those are all technical changes. The policing will tell you that they've changed, and they've really, but the iconic disproportionalities, the dial has not moved on the iconic disproportionalities. They are very much in existence. So what now? How do we move forward? And I think it's important to move forward through external intervention. And I think that the only thing will suffice now is a royal commission. No more reviews. There's a whole mountain of reviews, and we can name so many, but they pick and choose of which recommendations they want. And I think now is the time that we all have to ask for something different. As Andy's quite rightly said, this can't carry on anymore. It's carried on for decades. When will it stop? And when will we get an equitable police service that we all deserve? Thank you.